Warning, this episode contains graphic language, depictions of violence, magic-induced elf raves, envy-inducing tattoos, and as always, teen angst. Also, there'll be spoilers for chapter 46 through 49 of Eldest, book 2 of the Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who also can make his tattoos come to life. All I have to do, Jackie, is dance naked in front of hundreds of spectators, just like the elves. It's magical.
And I'm Jackie Lanier, and is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where we also agonize over our big performances, frequently earning the feedback, rough but true.
And if you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in our show notes. If you can't or just don't want to, we totally understand. We just ask that you please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, and if you don't know by now, I'm not sure if you've been listening, but I'll remind you again, you can find our exclusive merch, fun facts about us, and our episode archive at our website, isthisjustfantasypod.com. Also, feel free to send us some questions. We might read them on the pod or do a bonus episode Q&A, an idea I'm tossing around.
Okay.
You can email your questions to isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com. Before we get into very exciting party, rave, elf magic.
Cannot wait.
In this episode, I do want to take a quick look back at what we covered on last week's episode. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Eragon and Oramus start full ancient language immersion lessons, but it's not all a bummer at magic school. They also learn by having magic water balloon fights.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oramus traps Eragon with air and teaches him to never speak in absolutes, but this is the first time Eragon sees Oramus's magic sickness, and he gets super worried about his mentor. And interpersonal tensions abound during our time in Elismira, because Eragon and Saphira have a fight after Saphira gets a little too frisky with Glader. And on top of that Eragon Kevins it up during a garden tour with Arya when he asks about her favorite flower, which was a gift from her dead ex. And that is an awkward conversation to have with somebody. Trust me, I'd know. But the next morning, it's time for Eragon to start his daily sparring with his new partner, Draco Elfoy. When the haughty new bully on the block insults Eragon, he flies into a rage and has a seizure during the ensuing fight. After a calming yoga and meditation regimen, Oramus and Eragon get into debate club to pick apart the nature of evil, and Oramus hints that it might be wise to check some prejudices against the Urgles. They also discuss killing with magic and the use of words in battle, which leads Oramus to suspect that the twins were the traitors to the Varden.
Dun, dun, dun.
Could not have seen that coming. Those guys seemed so cool.
They're very chill.
Then our favorite Professor Daddy drops a ton of new knowledge about the Rozak before deciding that maybe arts and crafts would be a better use for the rest of their day. He starts teaching Eragon to make a fancy magic painting called a Fairth, which is rough going until a beam of inspiration crashes the classroom. Oric and Arya show up, and the world's most awkward bean farmer decides to make a pixel-perfect Fairth of Arya.
Oh.
I know you're probably surprised. You thought it was going to be Oric.
Yeah.
Makes
I
sense.
would have made one up for Oric.
That's correct. Well, she gets pissed when she sees it and just like yeets it as far away from herself as she can get it.
So out of her character.
And, yes. And only Oramus is able to convince Eragon of the depth of discomfort he's put Arya in by having such an obvious crush on her.
Yeah.
He spends all of his free time in the next couple days trying to find her to apologize, but she's a master at an evasive maneuver, and he has no choice but to double down on his schoolwork to distract himself. He actually makes a lot of progress here, particularly in spells dealing with great energies, because apparently now the chiefest of his talents is knowing his magical strength with pinpoint accuracy. How times have changed. He even against all odds learns to cook. I never thought I would see the day.
It's amazing.
So Brahm isn't the only writer with a stew recipe, evidently.
I bet you Brahm got it from Oramus.
That would make sense, yes. So thank God Eragon can now cook the same delicious crockpot stew.
Yes.
Eragon also gets an earful from his new sparring nemesis about his myriad deficiencies as a human rider, but Oramus bolsters his resolve with a stream of truly incredible pep talks. We love Oramus.
He's great.
Be like Oramus. Meanwhile, in Roranland, the people of Carvajal arrive in Narda, disheveled and hungry. We flash back to their journey through the spine, and while it was treacherous and strenuous, Roran managed to secure his hold on this military dictatorship by being a truly competent leader through the journey. As he enters Narda, Roran discovers that he and Eragon are wanted men before asking around town to find a boat. They discover their only option is a trio of barges they can't afford, owned by the amazingly named Clovis. Roran suggests stealing them, but Horse disagrees with cheating an honest man's work, and the rest of the village somehow feels that they're above barges, a thing they cannot afford. Roran goes full, you'll get on my barge or you'll walk, and after a chilling leather blocka sighting that night, the villagers hop on the barge wagon. On his way back into Narda to hop his barge and skip town, Roran is recognized by 2 gate guards and just absolutely murders them.
Yep.
He's able to make it to his barge and well into the bay before the alarm sounded in the town, but he has to come clean to Clovis about who they are and where they're from before the barge captain will agree to take them through to Tyrm. And we left Stronghammer just as he was getting out onto the high seas on his trusty barges. How many times can I say the word barge, Dane?
Well, I'll barge in and tell you to stop.
Thank you so much. I needed that reminder.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, that was where we left the last episode's chapters. Are you ready to get into this episode? How'd you feel on your read this week?
I always enjoy this section of the book.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to get ready to go and dive in. How did you feel?
Yes, the symbolism here is hitting a fever pitch level. We are
absolutely.
We're just reading the Bible at this point a little bit.
There's a little bit of that.
A little bit of that. I'm going to get into it later, but I'm excited to jump in, let everybody know what the hell we are talking about.
All right, we'll go.
Take us away, Dane.
It takes us to chapter 46, the beginning of wisdom. Eragon comes back, and much like when we left him, time is passing, and his training is more montage than day-by-day narrative.
Yeah, that's true.
He loves a montage.
Yes, we love a montage.
Yeah, that's true. It's like almost as much as revenge. Eragon is in love with Elsmira, but Arya no longer will talk to him, running away
Womp.
if he approaches. Eragon goes to her room to apologize that she won't talk to him. He's pretty intrusive and creepy here.
Yeah,
He even stops to read a poem she wrote. He offers her flowers. It's awkward. He apologizes too, and that's also awkward. Arya tells him that she's leaving after the Blood Oath ceremony to get back to the Varden. She mentions that she's been gone too long, and we learn that her poem was made for the Blood Oath ceremony, as that's part of the holiday. People bring art and gifts.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it's like Elven Christmas.
Every 100 years.
Yes.
I would also be stoked if I only had to have Christmas with our whole families every 100 years.
Right, you'd also be moody the rest of the 100 years.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. Eragon leaves pretty quickly, but it seems like these crazy kids might figure it out after all.
You think?
I don't know.
I've still got doubts. Considering Eragon's new courting technique is breaking and entering, I've got some questions.
That's true. Maybe I'm reading too much into this apology. The chapter cuts to, for some reason, like the coolest thing to me, Eragon is practicing air fighting on the back of Saphira, and they're fighting off Glader, which is
that's cool.
Really cool. And he talks about him tucking his face into certain places and having special arm straps he locks his arms into so he doesn't die smacking into Saphira's spikes.
Yeah, crazy.
Which I had never thought about.
No. I guess that'd be a problem.
Yeah, he even pushes like special lip balm on his skin to protect his skin. It's a whole
You've
thing.
gotta keep the lips soft, Dane.
I love it.
We love a moisturized king.
That's absolutely right. Glader explains that he has taken them without Oramus, as was custom in time of the riders, to hammer home the importance of what it means to be a rider and the origins of the bond. They go on a field trip.
That's fun.
Yeah. The information he is about to share was fairly secret and unknown by most.
Okay.
But since the Dragon Riders get all the cool stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, when peace was finally made between the elves and dragons all those millennia ago, the queen of the elves and an important dragon that can't be named with words basically came to the conclusion that a written treaty would not work and they would be back to war at some point.
That's Fair, I think. That's a good conclusion.
Yes. This is bad because both races were too powerful and they would eventually eradicate each other. So they decided they need a link between the two races permanently.
Yes.
The best elven magicians crafted the spells and the dragons provided the strength. And together they melded the souls of elves and dragons. The dragons gained language and elves gained longevity. The elves changed more than the dragons, and humans were not changed as much for two reasons. The first being that they were added after the fact.
First being they weren't there.
Yeah, first being they didn't get added until later, and the second being it just wasn't potent. I guess as they were added to the spell, they weren't like the initial spell.
Like by the time they were added,
Yeah.
it was like you could live a while, but not forever.
Right, it's like we already did this, so most of that went to the elves. Yeah,
We go way back.
Yeah,
You guys can just like come hang out with us.
you're just like new. You wouldn't get it.
They're like the Katie Heron of this
Yes,
Bond pact.
that's exactly right.
Incredible.
Glader goes on to explain that the three races' fates are connected now, and that since the fall of the riders, all three races have been in decline, and Galbatorix hurt the humans as much as the elves and the dragons.
That sounds right from what we know about how he treats his subjects. Yeah.
Yes, and for contrast, the Doors are still thriving and have not
Well,
been.
yeah.
Yeah, and they haven't like changed as much since the fall. Since the humans and
Okay.
elves and dragons have. The elves, on the other hand, are less powerful than they ever were and are on their way out. They're dwindling their numbers.
Interesting.
Humans have lost much of their culture and are consumed with chaos and corruption. So that's not good.
No, problems abound.
Yes. There's a special phrase that needs to be said over the eggs to go to the that go to the writers
Okay.
that triggers the magic bond we learn, and like they can keep the egg from hatching before the person bonds with them, and that dragon in there can stay indefinitely.
That's very cool. I like that it's like a little cryogenic freezer pod for a little BB dragon.
Right? And that means that those other two are viable.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Important.
Yeah, it's really important. And then like we learned that a wild unbonded dragon is so much more wild than the dragons we know in this book, which confuses me because they are wild already.
Yes, they are vicious. Saphira wants to murder everything all of the time
Yeah.
and eat it. And it's just like, yes, I'm the best creature to ever have existed. And if I weren't bonded to you, I'd be insane.
Yeah.
She'd basically be Roran, but a dragon.
Exactly.
The bloodlust would be high.
Exactly. We also learn, and this is cool because Glader's giving this a whole perspective from the dragon's point of view, which I love. And we learn about Shuriken and what Galbatorix did to Shuriken is so horrible.
Yes.
The bonded connection is a perverse construction of Galbatorix's design overlaid over Shuriken's original bond.
Because yes, Shuriken, right, was a hatchling. So he was a baby dragon bonded to a human.
Yes.
Or
And
a
that
rider.
A rider, you know.
Human or elf, I don't think we know. They murder the rider.
Yes, it stole Shuriken.
That's got to be bad, yeah.
And then he did his magic over it. Can't be good.
Well, which is kind of weird because then if they went into war immediately after that, Shuriken wasn't a little BB flying around in the war.
Well, remember they actually ran away for a while and laid low.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
I was like, how did that happen? This
Yeah.
magic seems like it's got facets maybe that we don't know about.
Well,
I
it was
guess.
they ran around long enough for remember the writer stopped looking for Galbatorix.
That's right. After he stole Shuriken. You're right.
Yeah. So then Glader goes into some details outlining the idea of souls and how dragons and riders cannot send their consciousness or their souls to others at time of death. So
Okay.
that would be an abomination. So like, you know how we were getting that, like, remember that one chapter where Eragon goes completely into like a Saphira's body, so much so
Yes.
that everything's blue? I think what we're getting at here, it's not explicitly said, is that they share a soul.
Okay.
And that like they need to let their souls be separate when they die.
Okay.
Don't go into each other when that
Yes.
happens.
I did find this really interesting. And he's like, you're going to be tempted. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
So Eragon ends this chapter with a deep desire for meat. And Saphira's like, dude, I have to go eat meat. And if you come hunt with me, they won't know you're eating meat. So they go for Taco Bell run. And Saphira asks him to get his own food, as she does not want to share.
Yes, I do love her for this. She's like, the nachos Bel Grande are mine. Paws off.
Exactly.
Get your own crunch wrap.
It's
Get out
absolutely
my
what's happening.
space.
So he found with his mind these bunnies. These little bunnies,
How
little
to be
cute with bushy tails and little ears that pop
Dane.
out. Yeah, and he kills them with one of the death words. It was quick and brutal.
Yes.
And you could tell he's like, man, this kind of ruins hunting now.
Yes, really interesting.
Yeah, because he finds the consciousness then just uses magic on the consciousness, and it takes no effort at all.
Well, it is interesting to me because it harkens back to something that happened really early in book 1 when Brom first started teaching him, and he starts hunting by like sending stones flying basically out of his hand, and he hits without missing. And he thinks even then, like, this is kind of ruining hunting. Like, I used to like to stalk through the woods and like have to aim with my bow. And now he doesn't have to do any of that shit. And now he doesn't even have to use the stones.
He really just doesn't even have to move.
Yeah.
It's really wild. So no challenge. He cooks them. He's about to eat them. He even like brings out all of his like specials. Like, it's so hilarious.
Seasonings.
He like seasons it. I imagine he puts on like an apron and like is humming.
Do you think he pours the same red wine with rabbit as the guy from The Last of Us, as Bill?
Oh my gosh. Yes, of course.
Knows to pair a Beaujolais with rabbit.
Yes. Well, you need to. So anyway, he's about to eat it. Then he starts to think about his meditations and how the animals and ants all feel like full living beings with life. And in that moment, it feels to him like he's killed people.
Yes.
Human beings.
Yes.
And he's totally not going to eat them.
Yes.
And I don't know if I buy this explanation at all. I think I still would have eaten those bunny rabbits, but Saphira's a bro and she eats it all for him.
Yes, she's great like that. This does take us to our next chapter, chapter 47, Broken Egg and Scattered Nest. This chapter opens on Eragon doing some lines of glyph writing.
Okay.
While Oramus watches him glyph writing, Dane.
Okay.
Eragon feels a sharp pain in his leg and breaks his quill while he's writing, while Oramus also reacts to something. Like, Oramus is also jarred around the same time. Eragon realizes that he cannot get in touch with Saphira at all. She seems to have barriers around herself. And Glader, after a while, returns to the crags with a big wound on his leg. And after a standoff that Eragon can like sense but doesn't understand, Oramus is allowed to go tend to Glader and tells Eragon via Glader that Saphira is hurt and that he needs to get to her quickly.
Right.
So a lot starts happening. They're just having a regular ass school day.
Yeah. And then boom.
Yes. So Eragon's really worried about how he's going to reach Saphira based on where Glader has like intoned that they were.
Okay.
But Oramus reminds him of the name of the noble steed that carried him to Elismira, Folkvir. Justice for Folkvir.
You can't see me, but I'm rolling my eyes so hard.
Eragon uses his magic to summon his elite elven horse, Folkvir, and directs him to the Stone of Broken Eggs. Eragon commands Folkvir to wait for him at the bottom of the stone and uses magic. Actually, I think for a first, Eragon usually likes to climb shit. He's scaled many a cliff face.
Yes.
But not this one. He uses magic to just like Iron Man himself up
He just
on
like
top of.
I would imagine an elevator actually.
Yes.
Like you get like far vision in the cliff like do.
Yes, I think so. So he rockets himself up to the top of the cliff. He kind of has the thought, it's a little funny. He's like, damn, if I weren't so used to flying, I think this would have killed me, the shock of just like losing the ground below my feet. He gets to the top of the monolith, and on top of the Stone of Broken Eggs, Eragon finds what's clearly a dragon nest, like the remnants of a dragon nest, and eventually discovers Saphira like curled up in a cave. She initially snarls at him when she sees him, which is like the biggest hint we need for her mental state right here. And she continues to shut Eragon out of her mind. He has no clue what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, he's like, what happened?
Yes, he remembers the way Oramus waited for Glader. They just kind of sat on the crags looking at each other until something must have happened that Glader let Oramus come tend to him. And Eragon was like, well, I guess I'll just wait her out like Oramus did. But in the process, he notices a really deep wound on her thigh and speaks out loud to her because he can't get through to her in their minds. But he's kind of just stuck waiting for her to reestablish contact.
Yeah.
And when she finally reaches out, she says she's lost and unsure about what to do for the first time in her life, which is crazy.
I can't imagine.
No, I feel like this is such an interesting insight into dragons and Saphira specifically. Like she was born not that long ago. What is she, like 8 months old, something like that?
Yeah.
And when she was a baby, she definitely needed Eragon to help take care of her, but without any like contact, she couldn't really speak to him at first.
Yeah.
There clearly were no dragons to help her understand what was going on, but she's always instinctively known what to do in situations. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, dragons have like otherworldly confidence and like pizzazz. I don't know.
Pizzazz, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it.
They've got panache, kid.
You got that stuff, boy.
They've got gumption,
Yeah,
Dane.
exactly.
But Eragon's pretty...
Wait, is this what grit is? Is that what everybody's upset about?
Maybe, yes.
Yes, okay.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. But Eragon's really confused when she reaches out to say this. She's like, what the fuck happened, dude? Just, like, come clean to me.
Yeah.
And Saphira, instead of telling him that, tells him, like, she's like, do you know where we are? Do you know what this place is? And he's like, no. And apparently it was the location during the war between the dragons and the elves.
Mm-hmm.
The elves climbed up this monolith and slaughtered every single egg in this dragon nest.
Not great.
No, truly insane. They were like going for a genocide, didn't quite do one. So Saphira, like, she tells him this kind of vague story about this horrible slaughter at this place she chose to like curl up and convalesce. And finally like reveals to him, once she feels like he's understanding her, he's really feeling the depth of the pain of a dragon. She reveals that she thought Glader would be her mate, basically, when she met him. We've been seeing this. We've been watching her flirt with him.
Yeah.
And she thought that they could rebuild their race. And she tells Eragon, Glader doesn't want her.
Oof.
And I mean, Eragon might be woke here. He tries to comfort her, but he's like, it would be improper for Glader to mate with you. He is your mentor. And like, we love a king who understands power dynamics and consent.
He's like, of course not. He's your teacher.
You have a large imbalance of power. He could very much take advantage of you. Come on, girl. Stand up for yourself.
Have some self-respect.
Yeah. No, she obviously is in a bind. He's the only male dragon.
Yeah, it's a little different. We're making a lot of this.
Yes, but Eragon is funny. He really does try to comfort her. He ends up, she's going to allow him to use this very complex spell to heal her injured leg, which works. But it saps much of his remaining strength. Honestly, I'm surprised he does not have a seizure because of this.
Right.
And then Saphira ends up actually admitting to treating Eragon poorly since they've arrived in Elismira.
Yes.
She's like kind of been ignoring him and like very obsessed with Glader.
Yeah.
And she apologizes for her behavior here.
I'm so glad.
Yes. He reassures her that she's his family. Nothing she can do will change that. He tries to make her laugh by tickling her.
He's like, tickle, tickle, tickle.
Yes. He's like, you know, Saphira's very worried about having to face Glader again.
Yeah.
And Eragon's like, you know, I'm sure he'll apologize for like doing this to you and like starting this fight just because you said you wanted to mate. And Saphira's like, oh, no, I started the fight. Yeah. She's like, no, I bit the fuck out of him.
Did she say she also like was winning? Like, was she like, nah, I had him right where I wanted him? Is that what she says? I
don't remember if she says it like that or not.
I'm pretty sure she's like, I had him, dude.
Oh, I bet she would.
Yeah.
It's very in character for her. I just remember her being like, I definitely started. And Eragon's like, well, the only thing for it is to apologize. And I'm just like, well, the bean farmer would know. Yes. That's pretty much his only thing at this point.
Didn't we just have an awkward apology, like literally the last chapter summary?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the chapter ends as they take off and fly back to Elismira, saying in their minds that they're one again. So it's good that they've made up. They're feeling very like united after kind of their weird stint in Elismira here.
Yeah. It's I'm glad that happened though.
Yeah.
I love them together and I'm loving them more and more as a team.
And I think it feels realistic that Saphira would be like,
yeah,
I need to mate with somebody. We don't have any dragon eggs.
Yeah.
Like it would be important for us to rebuild our race.
She wants to have other dragons around. I mean, that makes, even if it's not about like rebuilding the race, it's just like, I wish there was other of me that I could talk to.
And it's really sad. I think she's even like, he doesn't think I'm pretty. I'm like, oh,
Saphira, you're gorgeous.
I know.
You are blue, girl.
She was described as a hottie like all the other women in this book.
I know.
Never forget, girl.
Well, don't worry. Things are looking up for everybody because we go to chapter 48, The Gift of Dragons, and montage time continues.
Woo, burr, 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 burr.
Although Eragon is getting more sick by the day.
Yeah, that's a bad montage is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's just a seizures montage.
It's weird. I think Eragon's found peace in this moment. Even though he's getting sicker and sicker, he and Arya are friends again.
That's true.
He goes to concerts and meets people.
That's true.
The two of them get to know each other as like real people.
Yes.
Which I'm like, dude, did you learn the lesson? You gotta learn. You know her as a person, brah. Then make the decision.
Who told him?
Yeah, it's like Saphira.
He doesn't need to be learning how to flirt with a woman.
Saphira in the cave was like, okay, let me tell you. I thought you'd figure it out alone. Maybe that's what happened.
Maybe.
Anyway, Eragon and Saphira are closer than ever, as we just were talking about, and they've really grown as a team. And I didn't realize how much strife they had actually until we started talking about it, and it's taken its toll. And Oramus tells Saphira and Eragon a week before the Blood Oath ceremony to prepare some gifts, as it is customary, and they are to be separate. They have to do one each, and they must do something individual. Like they have to make it. Obviously, he's outclassed as the best of the best and oldest artisans in the world, as well as the most powerful and talented magic users will all be making gifts.
And he has a It's been
1 week. But like, why did Oramus give him only 1 week?
It's a test, Dane.
Yeah.
It's all a test. No, he probably just forgot.
Right.
He does not, Dane. This man is ancient. He has no idea the way that time works.
But I was thinking about this is still only like his 8th.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right?
That's wild.
Yeah. So he finally settles on a poem of his battle with Durza, and he attempts to make his own poetic epic.
Like in the style of the elves, right?
Yes, he's doing it in the elven style, in the ancient language. And this has to be like, I think Christopher Paolini putting a bit of himself into Eragon.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
And I imagine this whole writing section must be like a little insight into his love of writing.
Yeah.
It's really beautifully written. And Saphira is so nice and remarking that the illiterate bean farmer living in the remote mountain village she first met would never have been able to do what he's doing now, especially in the ancient language and in the style of the elven like people. It's like so nice. Good for you, Eragon.
Yeah.
I would still be embarrassed to share my poem though, wouldn't you, Jacqui?
Dude. Yeah, the only reason I'm able to do this somewhat publicly is that it's just you and I in a room with an angel from heaven, Kevin, who produces for us and weirdly does not judge us for all the weird shit we say.
It's so much more than we're recording. So much more. So this is also pretty funny. Oramus says, and I'm quoting when he reads the poem, rough but true.
I feel that, yeah.
I love this guy. He's so stoic. He's like, it's all right, man.
It's fine.
Yeah. So Oramus gives Eragon some wards he's to put on himself and Auric during the Blood Oath ceremony. And I guess this is going back to like the sex magic we got earlier.
Your favorite.
Yeah, there's so much magic going on in Elsmiris during this that the elves are going to be mad.
Yes.
Like they're going to lose their minds.
Yeah.
Without the wards, Auric and Eragon would literally lose themselves in the magic.
And it's a lot more elves than usual, right? Like,
yes, they're all coming from all over the forest.
They're converging to Elsmira.
Yeah. It's like, it sounds like there's like big cities throughout the forest, but like this is the local hub, although hundreds and hundreds of elves are showing up.
Super cool.
It's really, really dope. Because just really quick, we have not mentioned this on the podcast. It's seeming kind of empty in Elsmira.
Oh, yes.
Eragon talks about this. There's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of elves.
Yes, there's a lot of like empty homes, and it's like, okay, is it something like Trondheim where the city's constructed to hold the entire race if it needs to, or is it like is the race in a little bit of decline? I don't know that we have. Do we have an answer?
Yeah, I think it's decline, and there's just less of them.
Yeah,
they just have less as a population number. So it sounds like this party is going to be lit. So the celebration is going to last for 3 days.
Super cool.
The night before it starts, it's like basically Christmas Eve.
Yes.
And that's when they start it. There's a gathering for magical singing. And then it's just magical and cool from here on out.
Yeah.
And from the eve of this party to the end of this chapter, Eragon only remembers in bits and pieces, and it sounds like a wild time.
Yeah, dude.
He didn't know when he slept or if he slept or what time it ever was.
We've all been to those parties, am I right?
Totally.
I really have not.
Oh.
I do love the way this is written, though, in like flashbacks and like half-baked kind of memories.
Yeah,
it's very funny.
I wrote down some of the fun things. He remembers dancing. My few favorites are like the elves are on the Manoa tree branches like ravens singing. What a cool visual. The gift section where there's like a glass ball with a new flower appearing inside it, blooming every few seconds.
That's very cool.
There's a shield that never breaks. Captain America came. Honorable mention to Auric, who made a puzzle that all of the elves love.
Auric's the best.
And they call him Longbeard. Like, sing Longbeard. It's amazing. Eragon tells his story.
Yes.
And it's very well received by the elves. He even gets like an elven lord to compliment him because he's like, it wasn't that good. And then Queen Islanzadi.
Just fishing for compliments. Classic Eragon.
Yeah, he reads it. He's like, oh, well, that's it.
I tried.
Queen Islanzadi is actually going to put it in the library.
Oh my God.
And she wants him to read it again. It's so nice.
It's so cute.
It's really,
Our
really
little
nice.
baby boy is
And
growing up.
I didn't read it. Every time I read this section, I'm like, oh my gosh, there was a lot of tension and sadness going on for so long.
Yes.
It's just like super refreshing.
Yes, it's very light, very like fun for once.
Yeah, like
in Eragon's storyline, it's been a while.
It's been
think.
so long.
Yeah.
And then Saphira, I was like, what the hell is she gonna make?
Yes, I had the same thing. We kind of see Eragon's thought process. I think he even asks Saphira while they're leading up, like, "Hey, girl, what you do?" He's like trying to cheat off her homework.
Yeah.
He's like, "What you got planned? Do you think we could like do something as a team a little bit?"
Maybe just like help me out.
And she's just like, "Get out of here."
And she's like, I got my own thing, man.
Yeah.
And she brought a stone the size of a man.
Yes.
That has been engraved with patterns she made while licking it when it was molten hot.
Crazy.
So she like blew it, like blowtorched it, and then licked it in patterns. And she like blows flames inside of it. It's got all these like holes through it.
Yeah.
And when the flames are inside it, it dances around the patterns and lights it up, and it looks like it's moving.
It's so cool.
It's fucking cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. At some point, like every good chaperone or miss pulls Eragon away and tells him like, hey, sit down for a solid
we
moment.
maybe need to take a little disco nap, my guy. You're
Eragon's
not
like, I'm
looking
not
good.
drunk. What
Yeah.
yeah. So there were magical beasts
Yes.
that have been changed by the magic forest. They've all come
Yes.
to the, it's really weird how they're described. There's a she-wolf woman and elves who've completely changed their shape. There's like a cat man.
Yes, yeah, this is some of the bod mods we talked about. Like,
So cool.
yes.
Finally, at the end of the third day, everyone is gathered at the Manoa tree. It's like winding down. And there are two elven twins with a dragon tattoo.
Uh-oh.
I know.
Uh-oh.
What's going to happen?
Not twins.
It's not been good so far.
Anything but twins. Not the twins, right?
Well, I mean,
They're not bald.
they're not bald, and they're elves.
Perfect.
Unless they take off masks. It was us the whole time. Anyway, so they have dragon tattoos, and the dragon tattoo goes from one twin to the other
So cool.
and covers both of them.
so cool.
And they start like dancing while they're all like, they're kind of like, it's described as like they're kind of always connected, but they're like swinging around each other.
Yeah.
And like swaying very fast until like it looks like they're sweating, and they're elves, remember? So like we've seen Arya run for hours without sweating.
Yes.
So they're moving so fast, their bodies are sweating. And what happens next, I did not expect until honestly, when I read this the first time, I yelled in my room. I thought it was so cool. As the two elves dance, the dragon on their bodies rip off and like flies out of them and is like attached by like a tail to them.
Fucking crazy.
And it reaches out, it like flies around the crowd, it like screeches. All the elves are singing now. Even like Saphira and Glader are humming along with it.
Oh my God.
And the tattoo blows fire and roars like an actual dragon. Yeah, it's wild. And then finally, it looks at Eragon and stops before him, and everyone is like, oh, it's going to happen. And Eragon hears in his mind, our gift, so you can do what you must. It touches his hand, and there's an intense pain.
Oh.
And the chapter ends here. What happened to Eragon?
He died.
Oh, no.
It's the end of his POV section. Such a bold move, I think, by
Yeah.
Christopher Paolini, killing his main character in book 2.
Really brave.
But on to Roar Naswada. Just kidding. That takes us to chapter 49 in A Starry Glade.
Yes.
This chapter opens with Eragon waking up in his rooms at night with the celebration still raging on. The whole thing takes place. It's like a 3-day long night, right?
Yeah, so what you're imagining, but in the background, we're kind of hearing.
That's, yes, exactly. Told you, he had to take a disco nap. The dragons sent him. They were like, my guy, boot and rally, get out of here.
Exactly.
So they sent him back to his treehouse.
Okay.
And Saphira radios as soon as she kind of, I think, senses that he's awake. She radios in. She's still over at the Manoa tree with this Lanzati, and she's like, my guy, are you okay? What the fuck happened? Eragon responds that he feels better than he has in, I mean, almost since he can remember at this point.
Yeah.
Saphira lets him know that he's only been passed out for an hour. And does this belong in the official head injury tally? You've already lost the bet.
I've already lost the bet, so I'm gonna say no because I don't think it does.
Okay. The head injuries are countless at this point, by the way, because of the seizures.
I know.
So Saphira and Glader say they had to stay at the tree to complete the ritual with the sentient tattoo dragon.
Yeah. Which I wonder what that was. They never
Dude.
they never talk about it.
It's So cool.
It's very cool.
So Saphira explains the best she can that the dragon's wild magic, like coupled with the elven ritual, this is a quote, anointed Eragon with what skill dragons possess. That's about as much explanation, I think, as we get for that. When he checks himself out to see what she means, he's shook. He goes into his little bathroom, his little shaving mirror, and he's like, oh, all the changes that would happen to a normal human rider over years have taken place in an hour. He looks distinctly elven, but with a strong, rugged human twist. I know. It's like, oh my God, we got it. Best of both worlds.
I'm like hot, but like hotter
like
than the hot ones.
So pretty, but still like manly and handsome. And we're like, oh,
I'm
cool.
like beautiful, but also like approachable.
Well, he does think like the only way I can describe myself is beautiful.
Oh, really?
In his own head, he's like, that's the only word I can use. And I'm just like, yes, queen, we love self-confidence.
He just like looks in the mirror and then just like flex.
Well, yeah, you know how you're supposed to like look at yourself in the mirror and do your like positive self-talk and affirmations.
Yes.
That's Eragon here.
Oh, okay. I normally just look in the mirror and go,
this again. Same, dude.
You're doing your best.
Every time we reset the cameras in this podcast studio.
Oh.
Anyway, he's still looking in the mirror here, and he turns around to like look at his back, kind of reaches and is like very tentatively wondering what's happened to his back.
Yeah.
And he cries because he discovers his back's been healed, his scar Durza's gone, along with any other scar he's ever had in his entire life.
He's like basically got a new body.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's absolutely got a new body. He gets himself dressed up to the nines to head back out to the party. He's like, I look so good. I've never been so beautiful. No one's ever been so beautiful.
He put on a vest.
He absolutely put on. He's giving big vest guy vibes currently.
For sure.
I do think he kind of has the thought though, when he discovers that his scar from Durza is gone, there's a little part of him, almost like Roran, when Roran's very contemplative about his body and like his control over it.
Yeah.
I think does have a little flash of like, that is a part of me. That was a part of my life. Is that part of my life gone now that I don't bear the scar to prove it? Like it has a little tinge of this when he's looking at himself in the mirror. I will say it's not all just like, damn, I look good. Let's go party.
Well, also it's a part of like, I mean, I know the Durza thing was painful and we've experienced how that was, but it's a part of like that event, which is like, I mean, people call him Shade Slayer. It's like part of who he is. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
It is kind of interesting. I like that he's introspective about it still, because he definitely has reason to just be like, hell yes, let's go.
He doesn't dwell on it too much though.
No. So now in his hell yes, let's go phase, he comes down out of the treehouse and wanders like slowly through the crowd back to the Manoa tree. He's like noticing his heightened senses as he walks, and he decides, he sees when he gets to the Manoa tree clearing, he sees Arya like slip into the woods at the other side of it, and ill-advisedly decides to follow Arya away through the woods.
Come on, one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah. So she definitely gets the vibe that like somebody's kind of on her trail. They walk for quite a while. And she eventually turns back to see who's following her, and she barely recognizes him.
I always got the vibe that they're like moving fast and like kind of like there's a competition going. Is that the vibe you're getting? Like she's running through the trees and he's running through the trees, and there's a little bit of like laughter, a little bit of like, I don't know. I don't know. That's the vibe I always pictured.
Interesting.
But I might have pictured that wrong.
I think that's just 12-year-old Dane.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I didn't think they were running. I thought they were kind of just like walking, but at like a fast elven clip.
Okay.
But he definitely, because he has so much time through the forest to be like, wow, I see everything. I see every like detail, every line. I hear everything. I smell everything. He has these heightened elven senses.
Yeah.
But after she turns back to see him, she's like, oh my God, it's Eragon. What the hell happened to you?
She's like, damn boy, you look Eragon?
Yeah. But she does like let him join her, and they continue to walk together through the forest and finally stop in like a small hollow by a stream. I will say it is very
the night is young.
Yeah, it is very romantic, but Eragon here cannot resist a vibe, our guy. He takes yet another ill-advised stab at wooing Arya.
Come on.
I know. He cannot catch a lesson. But of all times to do it, crazy elven magic swirl in the air, like
I know.
3-day-long starry, like beautiful night. He's just been healed of all injuries.
It makes sense, but like this would have been the moment to be like, I respected you.
Oh no, not our guy. So she obviously rebuffs him once again because she means what she says.
Yeah, she has a boundary.
Yes, congratulations to Arya.
This is the one thing I'll say in Arya's defense. Like, I might not like Arya, but I like this.
Yes.
She's like, no, man, I told you.
I've been telling you.
So I'm like, come on, Eragon.
Yes, it definitely, it's the cringiest, I think, of his come-ons so far. Except for when he broke and entered into her room. I was not sure where that was going for a while. Worse. But the way here that he's like, by the stars in the night sky. It's very like teen love poetry, big cringe. When she rebuffs him, she says, listen, dude, if you would do anything for me, can you leave me alone?
Yeah.
That'd be great. I'm like, logic.
Yeah. Congratulations,
Arya. So she effectively friend zones him, saying that they're not meant for each other, but she would like to be his friend. They have been spending time together. She tells him to find someone his own age, which is fair and advisable.
I will say a little hard. He is going to live forever. I will say this. I'm not defending Eragon. He's wrong.
Yes.
But like also, I do get it. He's an ultra powerful person who knows he's going to live basically forever. She's an elf. She's awesome. I get that he's like, who else am I gonna like go for?
Yes, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that he's like, who else am I gonna go for? And it does make sense. Sure, he's gonna live forever, but right now he's 16.
I know.
It's like, sure, maybe the age won't matter in several hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Wait several hundreds of years if none of it matters. If everything's made up and the ages don't matter, Dane, just wait till the ages don't matter.
He's a teenage boy.
He's a teen boy.
Yeah.
She does also say if he cannot get his shit together and stop professing his love for her every couple days or so, that they cannot be friends anymore.
Fair.
So she's like, we are friends. We can, I like you in your company, but if you cannot cut this shit out, we won't be friends. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Please stop.
Goodbye. So Arya leaves him alone by the stream and Eragon breaks down, fully just like sobbing. He's a broken man because his lady love left. And the chapter ends with Saphira flying in to console him as the Agaetí Blodrin comes to a close.
Oh my gosh. What a chapter.
Ooh, buddy. Blood Oath Celebration, Dane, was a ride.
Yes. I love it.
It was very fun. And I want to jump right into this episode's analysis section to pick it apart.
Let's do it.
It's time for analysis.
Yes. So this is obviously a really pivotal section in Eragon's storyline. Hard to overstate how important it is for him. And I want to talk about the clear theme and symbolic connections here to the idea of rebirth. I think what Christopher Paolini is setting up here has a ton of ties, obviously, to religious and mythological saviors and rebirths, which like doesn't always end well for those guys. So I'm like, we'll have to see how this goes for Eragon, because it's not always like a happy story, I think.
I hope it's better.
Yes.
He's been through a lot already.
Yes. Totally would agree. So I love that the first chapter of this section we're reading, it was called The Beginning of Wisdom. I think it's really setting the stage for a classic enlightenment to reincarnation pipeline.
It really is.
An old standby. And I know it isn't a feature of these books that usually plays very well to you, Dane, but I think Eragon's turn to vegetarianism in this chapter is pretty much like the most digestible it's written anywhere.
Nice.
Got you. We're clearly seeing his emotional evolution and his reasoning for his decision in this chapter. It's not just like, we're vegetarians and you'll get it when you get it. It's like, oh, I feel a way about killing this thing with a consciousness that I'm connected to. I think it's well set up and like well justified here.
I will say it's well set up for Eragon too. I feel like Eragon from the beginning has not really enjoyed. The beginning of this book starts with him going like the whales of the dead. And he's like, I don't like this.
Yes, respect for life definitely has come up, I think, in a couple different places in some of these themes. And it's something that Eragon has been working through since the first book, since that scene, I think, with the stone hunting.
Yes, exactly.
About. So like I definitely think it seems like well-seated ground here that we're on. And I will say too, at least if this helps it play well to you, I think he's already deciding here not to be like the annoying and like evangelical vegan that like for her version of any person on a diet who's just like proselytizing about their cool lifestyle change.
You just like do it for 3 months. You'll see how your body changes.
Yes, like he's already not doing that to Saphira as this happens or anyone else, which is very nice. And we've all had those friends or been those friends. Whoopsie doodle. Sorry about the whole turmeric shot thing, Dane.
I'm so sorry about my running phase.
So I do get it. I think that's like well tied in. I think it plays really well here that he's like, girl, you could do whatever you want. I totally get it. Cause she's like, well, what am I not supposed to eat meat ever again? You know, like we get it. This totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think what this early growth shows in the section is that he's becoming more interconnected with the world around him while at the same time realizing that the best way to lead is by example, not by beating people over the head with your like superior morals. And I think that for me is like big prophet savior kind of complex that he's getting here. And I think the next biggest tie to rebirth, especially in terms of symbolism, is that the ceremony takes place under the Manoa tree, which I know you went over a couple of episodes ago in your deep dive. It's a very, very archetypal tree of life.
It really is.
Yes. And the myth of the tree, much like the tree itself, is something that's so old and ever present. It's hard to know where it originates from.
Right.
But we see it in everything from Assyrian tradition to Norse mythology to Taoism, which in Taoism, it's a tree and a phoenix, which is very badass. They're like intertwined. I love it. It's a dope. Solid tree of life.
Yeah.
If you ever want to look it up.
If you want a tree of life, add a phoenix.
Add a phoenix, dude. Makes perfect sense. And I mean, I guess for me too, I was kind of picturing that with the dragon like tattoo winding the twins' bodies. I was like, that's very phoenixy to me. I'm very into it. So I think, you know, having that connection to this like pervasive type of mythology is very, very important
Jacqui,
symbolism.
They're not
here.
religious. All right. You're
these famous atheists. I also love that when you look at what happens throughout the night during the Agaetí Blodrin, we see everyone there essentially present offerings before Eragon's big reincarnation scene. And like for a culture of atheists, the vibes are very religious. I don't know how much more religious it gets.
Even the 100 years thing. I mean, it's so important and so sacred. It only happens
it's
once.
So ritualistic. It's so like eventized in their culture. There's a lot.
It feels like the social norms are totally like abandoned during this time.
Yes.
Which seems very religious, and I don't know. It just seems you're right.
I guess that's a good point too.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the way the culture is set up to like revere this celebration and the way like it seems like they come from all corners of the earth. It has that like pilgrimage Mecca. There's so many ties here.
There's a lot of it.
Yes. And I do have to ask, maybe a lightly off topic, but we're on the tree.
Yeah.
New Eragon is not the weapon under the Manoa tree, right? We're still holding out for machine gun.
It's probably a flamethrower. It's probably a machine gun. I don't know, because like the only thing I would say is in
it's
prophecies,
not fancy healed Eragon.
Right. I think in prophecies it's very specific to the language, and it's under the roots of the Manoa tree.
Okay.
And so my only thing is like, I actually initially thought this when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I just don't think that's the case.
No.
Yeah.
They would have had to bury him and then transform him.
Like, what are you doing?
Rebirth would have made sense. If Chris wanted to do it, Chris would have done it.
Zombie coming out, Eragon.
Well, on that point, that's kind of a good segue. The initial like collapse, fade to black, pseudo death that happens between the two chapters really primes us for how Eragon's going to wake up, which is all of his scars and maladies are gone. He somehow has got new abilities unlocked. Like this is the rebirth.
Well, it was after a 3-day party.
Yeah.
So he was reborn after 3 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it was like night 2.
Oh no, it's the end. It was the height of the Agaetí Blodrin. That's why Arya's gonna be gone.
Oh, on the 3rd day.
Yeah,
you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay. Yes, and I love the way he pretty much immediately goes out exploring after he comes out of his treehouse, so we can kind of discover his heightened senses, his new abilities right alongside him. It's almost like the prophet being reborn and going out amongst his people. I mean, the only thing here that really does not fit well is obviously profession of love to a random woman who does not want you.
I don't know though, because like the insinuation here is that like, I mean, isn't Eragon a virgin? So There's a bit, I don't know. I think you could, like,
I
if
mean,
we
that
tried
makes
really
sense,
hard, I think we
sure.
could make it that he's still pure.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I don't like that either. But I'm just saying for old school religion connections, it actually also works.
Okay, I could.
It's
yeah.
not perfect, but I would be like, it makes sense.
Well, yeah, I think it's the only part here that feels like just the slightest bit out of place, where everything else is like, am I reading the Bible?
Yeah, it's a little much.
Question. And I truly am very happy to not be suffering with emo chronic pain alongside Eragon anymore.
I know.
It was a really tough row for him to hoe. So
Yes.
I'm glad that he's not burdened with that anymore. I'm glad that we are not burdened with that anymore.
Well, we have Wild Eyes Rowan, you know what I mean?
That's emo.
Yeah, and he's kind of emo, and then we have like Katrina, and then like we have Elva, which I haven't mentioned, but like she's for sure emo.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, and
Or dark at the very least.
Yes, and it's not in this section, but again, I think we'll get back to it in later on analyses of this book, but there are a lot of religious ties throughout, speaking of Roran and of Elva.
I don't know what you mean with Roran. He seems
Shepherd, staff, chapter called Exodus. I don't know
what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I am curious, I guess, just wrapping all this up with Eragon, I really am genuinely curious, kind of a joke I made a few minutes ago, but if this like prophet/savior style rebirth is ultimately going to bode well or ill for our little bean farmer. Like, what are you trying to tell us, Chris?
Yeah.
Is he fine? Is he great? Is he going to save us all? Or is he going to be doomed in the saving?
I think that's the thing about the like religious mirroring here. It could go either way.
I know. It's well done.
I know. It's pretty good. It's
Yes.
You went like deep on this analysis.
You know, I tried.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You ready to go deep on a dive?
Yes, do a deep dive. All right, for this week's deep dive, I want to talk about the Dragon Bond that we've talked so much about.
Yes.
And what we've learned about it in the origin of the Dragon Rider story and the Dragon Riders of Old's training. And there's some extra information in the section that I pulled from the Inheritance Wiki with the Almanac that I've mentioned several times and with the A to Z Guide of Algasia. So if you don't want like any specifics or people, because this is your first time reading, I would just skip this section. But the only thing that's in here are just the specific people and times.
Okay.
So like you're not going to get any spoilers for the plots of these books.
I don't know. I always think it's a good Easter egg to tell us it's going to be a good deep dive when you've been on the Inheritance Wiki.
Yeah, I've been all over for this
Hell
one.
yeah.
So if you like not to hear that stuff, just remember it's spoiler adjacent material. It's not actually going to happen. So first, let's take everything we learned in the past chapters about the Dragon Riders to make a brief history of them time-wise, because I was always confused as a kid on the difference between Eragon the First and the decision to make the Dragon Bond and the treaty to end the war with the dragons and the actual magic that made it possible.
Right, like the treaty that created the organization of riders versus the first effective rider.
Well, actually, even beyond that, the actual bond itself. I did not know something that this is the first time I knew this for sure.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, so the timeline is that the Dragon Rider bond was created 2,600 plus years ago. From when the first book takes place. So from that first
Yes.
okay. The humans were added to the Dragon Bond just under 800 years ago.
Okay.
So not a long time.
Okay, so that's part of why we're like,
Yeah.
maybe you can sit with us, Katie Heron, and they don't like get all the shine.
Yeah, they don't like it.
Yeah.
Like this means that the elves bonded with the dragons for about like almost 2,000 years before the humans were even added.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's wild. Okay, so that's the nitty-gritty part. Let's get even deeper into it. The Dragon War, Dufrin Skulblaka, all right, between elves and dragons was brutal.
Yes.
And the end of this conflict started when Eragon the First found his dragon egg and had a close relationship with the young dragon that was hatched named Biddom.
Yes.
They did not have a dragon bomb as we know it.
Oh, okay.
It is still unclear to me how they communicated, as they were not magically bonded. They were just friends at this point. The two traveled through Algasia and worked on peace treaties between the two races.
Okay.
Again, to be clear, no dragon bond yet.
Okay.
Eragon the First and his dragon also would not have communicated with language, as his dragon could not speak yet because the dragon bond hat wasn't made.
Yes.
So what makes it cooler to me is this was a true bond of like friendship
and understanding.
Yes, and I think they just shared images
That makes sense. Do you think it could be, because predating this is like the consolidation of the ancient language and its like effect on magic writ large. Do you think it's anything similar to the way that that the ancient language conveys intentions to animals, even in this book? Like the way we learn that you're able to like sense a consciousness.
Yes.
And like through the use of these like true words that we have.
Yes.
Convey like what you mean and like what you want to do.
It must be.
Yeah.
So I think that Eragon the First talked in the ancient language, and Bid-Dum sent Eragon the First images.
Yes, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's how I imagine
Yeah,
that.
I think me too.
I never knew that.
That's crazy.
So that's the first time that I figured that out.
Yeah.
Okay. The queen of the elves at the time that Eragon the First was doing that with Bid-Dum, Queen Tarmanora, and an ancient white dragon that doesn't have a name, because again, this is pre-speaking.
So cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Both decided that the elves and the dragons would not hold to these peace treaties that Eragon the First and Bid-Dum were making.
Yeah.
And they would ultimately fight again.
Yeah.
Because like the written word means nothing to a dragon.
Well, it is interesting too, like as vaunted as Eragon the First is as like the first rider. He's like going around doing all this work, doing all the legwork, and then someone else decides like, that's not going to work. We're going to redo it in a way that makes more sense politically.
Well, I guess he paved the way for them to be able to do this.
Yes.
They wouldn't have talked at all.
Oh, for sure.
So, but yeah, you're right. It's still, he didn't create it. It's kind of a little funny.
Well, no, it just is. I don't know. I think it's interesting the way he does so much and then kind of gets shit on for having laid the groundwork.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like typical dragon logic, I think. They're like, we're not going to follow that. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, to stop the future war, they decided to make a spell that would create what we know is as the dragon bond. The idea being that souls of dragons and elves would be mingled and their fates connected. Now, war would not happen anymore because they would be intimately linked.
Yes.
So this takes 9 years.
It's crazy.
Of working on the spell. That's how long the best magicians for the elves worked on it. And they crafted this really powerful spell. And then the dragon said that they would all come to like give all of the dragon power. So all the dragons show up, right? It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So from the bond, the elves were granted immortality and great magic. Again, we get magic again, Jackie. I'm like, I want to know what the actual... we got to ask him. If we ever talk to Chris Brawley, I really want to know. The dragons were given language and civilization. And I think by that, it means like art, music, and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because like,
or just like organization, hierarchy, maybe.
Yeah, I don't.
Bureaucracy,
essentially.
They have a DMV now.
Yeah. That's so funny. They all have IDs.
Yeah. Nothing more than that. And the elves are like, we've blessed you greatly this day.
They're like, we have Amcos and McDonald's now.
And the dragons are like, cool.
Yeah, okay. So my assumption is at this point, I couldn't get a confirmation here, is that Eragon the First and Bid-Dum at this point, because of the new Dragon Bond rules, kind of get like their unmagical friendship bond upgraded to the new Dragon Bond.
Love that, yeah.
Yeah, that we know and love, right?
Comes with the built-in software upgrade. Love it.
Yeah, and he's made the official Dragon Rider, and Bid-Dum's made the official first dragon.
Yes.
And they start the Riders.
Perfect.
It's stated that the sole goal of the Riders when they were created was just to keep peace between the elves and the dragons, but as the years continued to go on, they kind of started doing that in all of Alagasia.
Gotcha.
Which actually also further makes sense for the dwarfs being like we didn't ask for this type of thing. We were not involved. We don't want your like power here. Get the hell out of here.
Okay.
So
I mean, it might have been nice to be included. Well, I'm just happy to be here. Not the dwarves. They're proud.
Yes.
They're an ancient and proud race.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that they were like, nah, man. Hellsvog made us of stone. Yeah.
And he made you to curse us, and we will not have any part of it.
Kuntera made you.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm a dwarf, like, purist. Well, that's not what I meant. It's not. Anyway. Oh, I'm flustered. So we have the when they were created and the how they were created.
Yes.
We also did the guiding mission of their order.
Yes.
Right? Peace.
Lovely.
The humans later joined and the peacekeeping mission continued. And I'm going to talk briefly about the organization of the Dragon Riders.
Okay.
This could be a bit off, but with the information we have so far and the help of the Inheritance Wiki, we can put together what most likely was the breakdown of the organization. At the top, you have the wisest and best rider. That's the leader of the Dragon Riders. And below him, you have the older retired riders who train and study.
Okay.
These are called the Elders. Oramus talks at great length
Right.
about how the riders were not only peacekeepers, but with their long lives in dragon magics, they were mostly scholars and artists.
That's right. Doesn't somebody call him Oramus Elder too?
Yes.
Does Eragon call him that on occasion?
He does,
Yeah,
because he was one of the elders when the riders fell.
Okay.
So below them, you have the active dragon riders who are still in the field, like keeping the peace.
Yes.
And finally, below them, you have the apprentices who are bonded by dragons, but have not finished their training yet.
Okay.
So next, their seat of power seems to have been Verowengard.
Yes.
The dragon riders had their own city on the island of Verowengard, and Verowengard was the island, and it seems like this is where most of the riders live. But interestingly, we learned that Oramus, at least he trained his riders in what is now Urobane, but was the old capital of the elves, Illyria. So I say that to say that they were like very connected to the elves.
Yes, and it seems like they have several like outposts where you could live and train and study and work as a dragon rider. And we actually found out they went to Verowengard when they added humans to the rider bond. So after all that shit went down with King Palancar, they added the humans, and the elves were like, the queen of elves at that time, famously hot-headed like somebody else we know, kicked them out of Illyria.
Yeah, that sounds cool and chill.
And they were like, fine, we'll go to Verowengard. Some of them obviously must have stayed in Illyria.
Yeah,
that queen came around eventually.
Yeah.
But that is some of the source of distrust for some elves still having human riders.
Okay, so what this is actually funny. It means the chill king who let Oramus come back to Illyria to train his riders was Arya's dad,
That's
Queen
crazy.
Islanzadi's mom.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Her Queen Islanzadi's mate.
Yeah, sorry. Not mom. That'd be weird.
That'd be weird, Dane. And we know the elves are weird, but I don't think that's how their families work.
So training was done similarly as Oramus is training Eragon, but with 2 or 3 students at a time, and over much, much more time.
Yes.
Those students would have started younger than Eragon, and the older dragon would teach the dragons, like we're seeing, and the older rider would teach the new riders, with the students needing to listen to both lessons, like we're seeing. So this is all happening pretty similarly. Interestingly, we know from Brom in the first book that the height of the dragon riders and their power were a very closely guarded secret. So all the stuff they could do, no one outside knew. And it seems true even now, with Oramus not wanting anyone at Eragon's training, and him telling Eragon and Saphira that a lot of what they're told is supposed to remain secret.
Okay.
And the writers kept it this way, even their magic, like because it was easier to work with the common folk if they weren't as terrified of the writers' magic skills.
Okay.
And it was an advantage against like people who were their enemies. And we learned the first
to just roll up and be able to be like, nah, we'll just sit down, little BB.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I'm like, so it kind of feels like the writers being magicians is a thing everyone knows in this series right now, but that's apparently not how it was.
Or that people maybe knew they could do magic, but they felt more like your run-of-the-mill hedge magician.
Maybe that's what they're
like
trying to
3
go
towns
for.
over, yeah.
Because the way it's described, I don't know. Because we learned in the first book that Eragon is extremely unusual in his use of magic, as he's years ahead of the normal progression of when human writers can use magic.
That's right.
And he's the youngest writer ever to start using magic like he did against the Urgles in book 1, like a month after getting his bond.
That's right.
And we even already heard, remember when Eragon touches minds with Grandpa Horse Caddock?
That was Caddock, we miss you.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, right?
Yes.
Brom tells Eragon that no one that young or that quickly does that.
That was true. Is it as young or as quickly?
I think it's implied
both.
Both.
Because Galvatorix is like 10,
well,
right?
But here's what I want to say. This is why I say I think it might be both.
Yeah.
It seems the Dragon Riders kept the extent of their magical powers secret because it was very dangerous and the Riders didn't want the new Riders to start magically training unprepared.
Yes.
So they took this to such an extreme that the students who were training as Riders were not told that they had magical abilities.
That's crazy.
And I'm assuming that only worked for the humans.
It's like, that
right?
seems dangerous.
And we're taken away from the non-magical using peers to learn from a private tutor the moment their magical abilities manifest.
That's crazy.
So during the early years of the Riders, most of their training, it seems, was only to build up the strength of their body, increase their mental control. Nothing magical at all.
Yes. So a lot of stump time.
A lot of stump time.
Okay.
A lot of pre-magic stump time.
Great.
Which would be the worst kind of stump time, I gotta be honest. This was supposed to frustrate and annoy the students. They would start to annoy them.
Okay.
And Oramus has shown that meditation and extending the mind magic was a part of that. So you're absolutely right. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Also from Brom, we know that a lot of the human riders often went on quests to discover their true name.
Oh, yeah.
Because their elven friends just
Knew him.
Yeah. And finally, it's important to note that Eragon's training was never like done this way. Like he's never really been formally trained.
Yes.
Like his training by Brom, as mentioned by Brom and Oramus, was like they skipped a lot of steps.
Yes.
And like Eragon's not going to be classically trained, nor will he be fully trained. Like they're never going to get Eragon in. He's not going to know Dragon Rider classic education. You know what I mean? So he's like fly by night kind of guy. He's a wartime rider. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then I know I said finally, but I do have two small things to note, and that's a little bit about me you just learned. Kevin's nodding in the back.
I feel
Our producer
not
Kevin's
surprised
like,
at all.
He's like, no, you don't say. First, it seems that all the riders, when they were done with training, got the famed Dragon Rider sword.
Oh.
Yeah, by Ronan Elder.
Oh,
blacksmith.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. She's called an elder too. Interesting.
Yes. I think she was like, my whole headcanon here is that she's like super like tight with the, like she was on Rowan Guard is my whole thing.
She must have for every single rider sword.
Right. That'd be full-time job, right?
Yes. Also, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just because I just thought about it. What is the attrition rate of the rider acceleration program?
Okay. I was thinking about this because of the Morzan Brom story.
Yes.
There has to be a failure rate or like there has to be a area in which you stop. Like, how would you stop it though? Because there's
got to be a release valve or something, but they're bonded.
They're bonded.
There must be something where you're like, okay, this is what we need to teach you so that you will be safe. It almost like I'm kind of thinking of like the Aes Sedai in Wheel of Time, where like
enough to
you'll
not hurt
kill yourself
yeah.
or you'll kill somebody else, you and this dragon, if you don't know at least this much, but we won't let you into all of it if you're like truly an idiot.
There's also like accidents happen. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
I mean, elves famously volatile.
Yeah, I mean,
we're truthers over here.
I'm being serious though. Like if you had an evil rider before Galbatorix, you wouldn't want it public, right?
No.
And like, what would be the best way to handle that?
I mean, the respect for life thing seems to suggest that might be tough for them, but I'm not ruling it out.
Those were the elven riders. I'm talking about my human riders.
Maybe, I guess there was a testing. I'm trying to think back to Galbatorix's story. So he was 10 when he was tested.
Yes.
And like had the ability to become a rider, right?
So yeah, then he got picked and then he like
and then
trained
an egg
normal.
hatched for him, right?
Yeah, and then he got normal training.
So it's not always just the egg hatching that makes you a rider. You have to like pass a test first. So maybe that first screening is like how they've weeded out most people besides Galbatorix.
They did like a psych evaluation.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, if you have somebody like Galbatorix or Morzan who maybe has the tendency to do some weird shit.
Yeah.
But like won't necessarily do it unless prompted, like something like your dragon dying or a very evil and persuasive person persuading you to fall off the deep end. Maybe you just like stay on the path.
Well, no.
And you're kind of a dick, but you're generally a good person.
I think you're right. What I was going to say is like notably like Morzan, Galbatorix was just a dragon rider, right?
Yeah.
Fresh dragon rider.
Yes.
With other fresh dragon riders. They all died, right? So he was not old.
No.
And then Morzan was a student.
Yeah.
So like the only bad guys we know of, frankly, as a new graduate and like a guy in his senior year.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And my thing is like maybe what they did is they did not let them progress to rider.
Yeah.
Until the psych evaluation was done.
Yeah.
And they were like, good, we've done 200 years of therapy. You're finally ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that sounds like it would work for almost anybody.
I mean, yeah, I guess,
200 years of magical therapy. Maybe there were a lot of Elvas running around knowing everybody's big T traumas and trying to coach them through it.
Hormus is like, how'd you know to do that? We did that.
That's his real shock.
Yeah. He's like, how'd you know to add her? The creepy babies don't come till later. Anyway, Ronan Elder, the old blacksmith, that we met in the book, she most notably will not be making a sword.
Yes.
For Eragon.
I was pretty bummed by this.
We can assume because she has sworn that she's not going to do it anymore.
She told Arya that she does not make weapons anymore. She's not going to do it anymore.
Not
she
happening.
was happy that somebody won Morzan's sword off of him and that Eragon has it. But even when she's looking at it, she's like, I wish it were blue to match Saphira. Traditionally, they're supposed to match.
I know.
Which is cute. And she's like, Saphira's scale color would have made a gorgeous sword, but I can't.
Well, I can't imagine a woman who made all of the rider's swords for, thousands of years, and who
Just
like
made him the same shade of yellow every time.
Well, no. What I was getting at is like, I don't imagine someone like that who like basically most of her life, it sounds like, has been that.
Yes.
It's only been a small amount of time that she hasn't.
Yes.
And that she's still practicing her craft would not want to make him a sword.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, internally she must be like, shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it sounds like she's a complete completionist. So like now she's got a loose end. I don't know. So second and finally, really finally, Oramus gave us an idea of the length of a writer in a field, because he was a scholar for like 700 years. It seems like they're only active duty for around 100 years.
Okay.
I mean, we have nobody else to compare that to.
Yeah.
So like there's no, I mean, maybe he's a special case. Maybe he was supposed to be a scholar or a good teacher or something.
Okay.
But we get the idea that like 100 years is probably the right amount of time.
That makes sense.
It does. It kind of does make sense, but
Nice round number.
It's a nice round. You're absolutely right. And that I can find no hate there.
No.
Not one bit of hate.
Nope.
But that was a lot of information. I hope it cleared some stuff up.
Yes.
But I do have to go into what are the haters saying.
It's a good idea.
And I'll try to be fast.
Actually,
you should do your research,
well, if you refer to
Have you
the
even
original
read a
text,
book?
how you pronounce it.
What are the haters saying?
There's an index in the back, right?
This is a really derivative.
But what the haters saying, and the main point of hate we get in this section of Eldest, is about Eragon's back being suddenly healed in a Deus Ex Machina situation. Yeah. I mean, well, let's see.
Okay.
For those who don't know, the expression literally translates to God from the machine. And when people use the term, it normally is in a pretty negative way.
Yes.
And in modern times, like God from the machine is used to imply that there was an unmentioned or unknown external power that solves the problem and that like before seemed unsolvable.
Okay.
Okay. And I would actually say that I think Christopher Paolini did a great job of doing this, if you're like, of not doing that.
Okay.
Like when he's doing this. But I think the way he did this makes it almost not that, if that makes any sense. So you see the power of the dragons fixed Eragon, which actually isn't surprising at all, given that their bond with the elven race turned the entire race, even like non-dragon riders, immortal.
Yes.
The dragon bond turns humans also immortal and gives our human partners magical abilities.
Yes.
The dragons have been known as as is mentioned over and over, to do things that break the rules of magic, wild magic.
Yes.
Right? Saphira, seemingly with no effort at all, made Brahm's tomb with her wild magic all diamond.
Yes.
Breaking the rules of magic.
Super crazy.
Saphira blessed Elva with a mark and then said, like, that said baby grew very quickly
into creepy, magical therapist girl.
Like Chucky baby.
Oh, God.
And Saphira has promised that she will put together the Star Sapphire Isidar Mithram in Trondheim once they like put it back together. That would also be impossible.
Yes.
So we have a lot of information about how magical and powerful the dragon race is.
Yes.
And we know that the souls of the elves and the dragons are one with each other, and that the elves are also very magical beings.
Yes.
Why wouldn't the hundreds of elves present with 2 large dragons not be able to magically fix or change Eragon?
It's a really good point, especially all the elves there singing, chanting in unison, like the ritualized like tattoo dragon magic, plus, 2 live dragons just like hoping and like wishing their wild magic upon the whole situation. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. I would go so far as to say like Christopher Paolini is not at all doing a Deus Ex Machina here. It's a planned, look at what we talked about in analysis with all the symbolism. It is a planned rebirth. It's hard to make the case it's not.
I don't know how it is Deus Ex Machina when we have the force that fixed Eragon and we know the power and the whole story about it. The literal book is mostly about how magical this is.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know. I gotta say this, and I don't say it often.
Yes.
But I'm with you. It's not Deus Ex Machina, and that means that we got a certified hater.
Oh my God.
Don't buy it. Get out of here. If you're a hater, I see you.
Certified hater proof.
Yeah, don't even get close to me this week. Stay away. You're wrong.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Well, it's okay.
I talk so much.
Yes, are you okay?
I'm like tired.
Well, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up
I have
Please
one.
talk more.
Yeah. It's good you asked me that, Jackie.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Settle in, bitch.
Yeah, settle up. I have some things to say. No, I have one fucking thing to say. Fucking cool.
Yes.
It's cool.
It was very cool. We love the rebirth. Like I said, I'm happy
Yeah.
to not be in chronic pain land anymore.
I thought you were going to say you're happy I'm done talking.
Well, that too. That's what I said. Chronic pain land. I'm happy to be out of that space.
What did you think? What do you have to say?
I am happy to not be in chronic pain land
okay.
anymore. For Eragon in the story. I'm
I
glad.
thought you were still talking about yourself. I was like, oh,
dude, no, I'm happy that Eragon has like kicked off the yoke of his old personality to
Yes.
be new, beautiful elf boy.
I'm hot.
I know he's beautiful, he says. So I'm very happy for him. I'm really excited to see where his story goes from here. I think, given that this is some sort of a rebirth, I almost am like, okay, are we on the precipice of him restarting the hero's journey as
Hell
new
yeah.
hot Eragon?
Yeah, Gabatorix better watch the fuck out.
Or Eragon better watch the fuck out.
Yeah.
Because again, the whole savior prophet thing
It's
sometimes has a
it's a tough road.
dicey ending. But I do want to say congratulations. I loved your deep dive.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes, it went really well. And we are out of here, Dave.
Let's
I think
do
that's
it.
Good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for listening today. Make sure to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Support us on Patreon and check us out on social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram and Twitter. If you have any questions or just want to write us about the podcast or anything else, you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you want to keep pace and read along with us on the next episode, we're going to be covering chapter 50, Landfall, through chapter 56, Premonition of War. Yeah. We're going to war, Dave.
We're doing
We're
it.
making landfall and we're going to war. The two most
And we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be. Thanks for catching our show.